Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, whenever you may be listening, and welcome to Latitude, the 43 North podcast. I'm your host, Nate Benson, Director of Content here at 43 North, and we've got a very special show this week with our partners at the UB Center for Leadership and Organizational Effectiveness, also known as Chloe, and we're going to talk to Barb Stegemann, who was one of the keynote speakers at the recent Chloe conference back in May. So this is a fantastic episode. The UB School of Management Center for Leadership and Organizational Effectiveness, also known as Chloe, is a group of researchers, scholars, and experts who work to create more effective leaders in organizations. Chloe offers programs, training, speakers, and conferences to help people lead at all levels of their organizations in and around the world. As I mentioned, Barb Stegemann is our guest. She was the keynote speaker at the recent Chloe conference, so let's not waste another minute and jump right into this week's episode of Latitude. Jim Lemoyne, how are you today?
Life is good. I'm blessed.
I'm joined by Jim today. Jim, for those who don't know you or don't remember you from the last podcast, give us the CV of you, so
the
to
last
speak.
podcast was so long ago.
It was so long ago for us. The magic of radio.
Yeah,
podcasting.
I'm an assistant professor at the University of Buffalo, researcher with Chloe. I focus on leadership and positive leadership, specifically servant leadership and ethics, stakeholder-focused stuff. We'll talk, as well as creativity.
We have a fantastic guest this week, a truly inspiring entrepreneurial story. I'm looking forward to having this chat today with Barb Stegemann. How are you today?
Great, thanks. Now I want to take your course. That's fantastic.
I think there are openings.
Wow.
A little bit of a commute.
A little
from
bit
Nova
of a
Scotia.
commute, but
maybe we can work on an online.
an online. Oh yeah,
option.
that'd be fantastic.
Maybe you should be a guest speaker.
I'd love to.
That might be a little.
I'd love
that might
to.
work
That's
a little better.
You said all the words that mean a lot to me.
All right.
Barb, for those who don't know you, give us the quick pitch of who you are and what you do and how you became an entrepreneur.
Yeah, I'm a social entrepreneur, and I source organic, fair trade essential oils from farmers and nations rebuilding after war or strife, and we make perfume. We started with Afghanistan, and countries come to us now. We've gone to Rwanda, Haiti, and we're always open to working with communities that are looking for alternatives for jobs.
There's a fantastic documentary focused about what you're doing called Perfume Wars. I recommend everybody go check it out. I watched it, and it's absolutely brilliant. You know, in a lot of the press clippings I've seen about you, this was all motivated, your entire kind of entrepreneurial landscape was motivated by a friend being wounded in Afghanistan well over a decade ago at this point. Was there anything entrepreneurial in your life prior to that, or was this really the driving force? I mean, I know all of us had a lemonade stand at some point, but was this really the driving force, or was entrepreneurship always on the back burner?
Yeah, that's a great question. It was always in the back of my mind. I mean, I was the kid that had the Regal catalog, and I would go selling door-to-door figurines and calendars, and we didn't have much money. So anytime you could earn money, whether it was at the fall fair, getting the red ribbon, being the best in math in your class or English, and you got money, any way that we could make money, we were always interested in that. But one of the discouraging thing was, way back then, I guess I'm going to date myself, in the 80s, 70s, when you did those little tests, it always came up business. It always said I should be in business. But I always thought, that's for the really smart boys.
Right.
In the patriarchy, I sort of thought, that's not really for me.
Yeah.
I had no role models that were women in business. There were no female CEOs in my rural community, certainly that I had no exposure to. So I didn't think that was for me,
So what in the meantime, even though like you were testing, the tests are saying that you should be a business person, what did you do up until you decided after your friend was wounded in Afghanistan that entrepreneurship was for you?
Well, I think the foundation of my education really is the foundation for social enterprise. Studying the humanities, philosophy, seeking out justice and the truth, trying to protect my joy, all those wonderful Stoic principles. And then I studied journalism, my second degree, which is about communicating, which is what a business has to do anyway. And also journalism is exciting because you make cold calls. Yep. You're not afraid to find out the information. So all of those skills translate into business because you have to make cold calls to get into stores. You have to call suppliers. You have to be willing to do something no one else has done before. And you have to fill a need that's out there. And so it just all kind of culminated. And now I think that should actually be the foundation for social enterprise. Now that we're in the wild west of social enterprise, what is a social enterprise? What does it look like? I think that there's room to take those skills.
So let's talk about that. One point in one of the clips I saw of you that you were really very clear on is that this is not a charity. So now for people who aren't familiar, it's for-profit business.
Yeah,
correct?
That's right.
But very socially focused. So
that's right.
Explain, there's some people watching right now who are kind of confused by this. She's talking about making a difference, but making money. So what's the difference between what you do and a charity?
Right. So, well, I was raised in welfare and poverty. When people dropped off the Christmas hamper, I know the intentions were very good, but my sister and I didn't want them to drop off food and drive away. We wanted them to invite us to the banquet, to include us. There's nothing more wonderful than earning your own income and spending that money on the things you want to have. But when someone drops off charity for you, they're deciding that you're going to have these things, and it's more for them than you. For me, the philosophy of swinging the doors open to the banquet and including people with dignity and jobs is crucial. And that can't happen unless your company is operating and making money so that you can pay your suppliers fair wages and create jobs. And when you look at some of our countries, Rwanda, for example, the farmers there who make 3 times the income growing our patchouli crop, you can't buy a school uniform for your children with bananas. You actually have to have an income. So that's where charity is not as effective as dignity and jobs. The other piece is when I was in Haiti, I really saw it with clarity. For anyone who's read the Transparency Index, where we look at countries that are corrupt, the corruption index is quite high in impoverished countries, which is heartbreaking, because that's really the root of it. And so an example of what happens to charity, why it doesn't necessarily get through. In Haiti, after Hurricane Matthew, I was volunteering teaching women marketing. And while we were there, a good friend of ours came in, sitting with other NGOs in the evening, and he was quite upset. And he'd been to the south where the hurricane had hit hardest. And I mean, they didn't have a mango stick, they didn't have a bottle of water, nothing. And the boatload of aid that all the fundraisers had put together, you imagine all the people that donated their time and showed up and spent the money on the tickets, the boatload of aid that they desperately needed was turned away because the boat didn't have a big enough bribe for the official. And this is where, when you do social enterprise, if you're working with a pre-qualified supplier who ensures that their community gets a fair, reasonable income, you're working directly with the people, it gets to them. And so charity, of course, is urgent and necessary in cases that are desperate, but if we're going to make lasting, meaningful change, we really need that cavalry of social enterprise coming to create those jobs, make a difference.
Should businesses be concerned with lasting social change, or should they be, no, that's not our job. Our job is just to make money?
You are a philosophy professor, aren't you, right? These are good questions. I think it is our responsibility. I mean, if you go back to Plato's Republic, the good life is basically the tripartite soul, 3 levels of government, nonprofit, private sector, and harmony. And that's when you have the good life. When you have a skip, that's when you have urban decay or war. And when we make government and do all the heavy lifting, we're never going to break the cycle of war. So when I look at even Afghanistan, where my best friend was serving, and our military sent the troops in, we didn't send a business cavalry. And so as a result, we still have a lot of the damage and the pain and the problems going on, and the blood is shed for naught if we don't have change. That's why Captain Green went in, was to make change. And so the way I sort of, my analogy or my story, the way I imagine this is, when I think of the young man that put a Taliban axe through my best friend's head and absolutely altered his life forever and all of our lives, I think about that child, and he was poor. He was so poor, and his father was poor. And I think that, the Taliban could easily come along and give him $5 to kill a soldier, because you're so desperate and poor. You're so desperate. What are you going to do? You're illiterate and you're desperate. But then I can imagine this young man, if, say, his father was growing orange blossom oil or rose oil for us, or saffron or pomegranate for someone else, then when the Taliban came along to offer him $5 to kill a soldier, he would have said, bugger off. I've got a phone. I've got dreams. I'm going to school. But without that job, then we don't have the complete good life. We don't have that harmony together. And I think that we've lived in a world where we've constantly expected our military and our government to do the heavy lifting. It is absolutely incumbent upon business to take up that and create the good life and be part of that harmony. And what's exciting to me and encouraging is these new generations. My kids are millennials and Gen Z. These kids, 9 and 10 millennials will switch brands for one with a cause, and we have a cause. They are flexing their buying power. So it's something that business needs to get in the program, because the buyer is deciding.
And that's where I was hoping you'd go next. You present a really compelling case, macro, global, that business needs to make a difference. But how important is the social impact for you? How does it impact your ability to make profit?
It's interesting. I've never really thought about the profit. I know that I should, but I believe in return on love as much as I believe in return on investment. So what's the return on love? What are we doing to change the world? That is as important as return on the ROI.
It's this idea of emotional and financial capital coming together, right?
It is. And it's also knowing that, for example, I have a product, the Rose Amber. It makes no money because a liter of rose oil is $16,000 US. So I never had a word for it until I realized we'll call it my return on love product. It's never going to make money, but it's got a purpose so that little girls in Afghanistan don't become opium brides, that their fathers have meaningful incomes. So I have another product that makes a lot of money, so it can balance it out. And so that return on love is really important. So sometimes you're making products that maybe don't make money, but the other one will carry it. And that's a social enterprise in my mind. As far as profit goes, I didn't set out... I think the DNA of any social enterprise is to make change. But the key to making money is fixing people's problems. So it is the same thing, except I just look at it through a different lens. The way I look at it is, are we fixing people's problems, both on the end in these communities, but also for the consumer who's looking for something that is a more purposeful, meaningful product. So as long as you're fixing people's problems, you're going to sell. So I look at it differently, but it's the same formulation. Anyone who's trying to teach their sales team in a business that maybe isn't a social enterprise, let's say, the bottom line is fix people's problems and you'll sell.
You're doing business with countries that are trying to rebound, whether that be from natural disasters, war, famine, etc. Business is hard enough as it is. In a perfect world, just doing business in the U.S. and Canada is hard enough. You're doing business on a day-to-day basis in countries that, like you said, are influenced by corruption or natural phenomenon or a plethora of situations. I'm always fascinated when I talk to entrepreneurs about what are the hardest days, what are some of those hard situations, what are the situations you've had to deal with and try to overcome as an entrepreneur in some of the hardest business climates on earth?
Yeah, it's really become, it wasn't so much in the beginning, but it is now, is looking at the quality of the oils and helping them get their distillation up to a certain level where the chemists and the standards of IFRA and Europe want the level of the product. So that's been challenging lately because they don't have the same access to what we have. But we've connected our supplier in Rwanda with a high-level group that creates our perfumes for us, and they're going to help them improve their distillation process because we want them to sell more. Yeah. We want them to sell to others. The other challenge is, just even getting samples through lately without them breaking from Afghanistan has been very challenging and frustrating for our supplier because we have to test the sample first.
Right.
Historically, the sample's always been fine, but we still have to test it because harvests change year to year, and we have to have that quality because at the end, I have to still deliver a high-level product to my consumer. They love the story, but at the end of the day, it's got to be standalone excellent, and it has to be their favorite thing. That's been challenging. And so we're working on different conferences. We just went to Puerto Rico with Chef Jose Andres and President Clinton at working on trying to, because, in Puerto Rico, so many challenges were really revealed after the hurricane. But they don't even really know how to distill oil. So we're going to bring together thought leaders that actually buy the oils, one of the biggest oil buyers in the world that works with us, and bring farmers from Rwanda, like our supplier, and share and cross-pollinate ideas. And I think that's where we can really start to improve not only the quality, but get others doing the same thing. Because the challenge in a country like, say, Puerto Rico, where unfortunately 90% of the food is imported, but they have beautiful food, is that when you try to export mangoes, they only have a certain shelf life. Right. But if you distill the oils into essential oils, which are really hot right now, you can fetch more money for the product. It has a long shelf life. And so now this has become something that's very exciting, and we're getting asked, come, bring experts that you know to talk on panels, to get farmers looking at food crops as something that is a little more long-lasting, like the beauty industry. And the perfume industry is I think it's well over a $3 billion a year industry, and it's only a baby product compared to skincare, color. So, you really have a lot of buying power for products that maybe aren't so conventional. Right. But when you look at what people are doing in Haiti with vetiver, sustainability because they cut down all the trees. The vetiver prevents erosion. It's very exciting that that's distilled then into a fragrance oil, cocoa butter. There's so many ways to create things that can fetch a pretty penny and also make sure they're fair trade and organic. And we can use all those products in beauty products because you don't want to be putting, the beauty is right now nobody wants chemicals in their skin. So this is the time for all these wonderful natural products to be created that they don't have to worry if the mangoes don't make it there in time. You've got the cocoa butter that will last for 1.5 years. So now you've got a shelf life. You've got oils that can last for well over 5 years. So that becomes very exciting. I mean, when you look at a liter of rose oil can fetch $16,000 US, that's really lucrative.
Yeah.
Right? So there's a lot of potential there. It's about keeping the quality standards up. We're not there yet. I would love to see a group of us go in collectively all the time, but we're doing our best to move as fast as we can.
A lot of entrepreneurs will say, it was the right, I was just in the right place, right time. Why are you the right person at this time to be doing what you're doing? Because obviously you're seeing some success. So what is it about you that has because nobody else decided to try this, right?
Yeah, no, it's funny. I read that question last night. I was honestly in the shower going, why am I the person? That was deep. I was like, I don't know. But then I thought about it. And I thought, I started this 10 years ago, back when people made fun of me. Banks wouldn't give me a loan. No one knew what a social enterprise was. We were so ahead of our time that even friends of mine who I met in Haiti, they shut their doors. They didn't make it. But I stuck in there because I believed in it. I didn't draw an income. I still haven't. I live off my books. It's been a lovely life. And so I was able to bootstrap it, and I don't think a lot of people are able to do that. If you don't have another alternative income, then you still have to take care of your kids. So I think social enterprise, that's been the challenge for the growth of a social enterprise, truly from a grassroots level where it's in the DNA. And I think a couple of things for me, my passion for my best friend who was my mentor in King's, and also being raised in poverty, I can get by with less. I know how to cut coupons, and I can get by with a lot less, having lived on welfare. So I can suffer a little more, and so I was able to make it through those very lean years when I should have shut my doors. And I am fortunate that I have an investor who invested on Dragon's Den, which is like your Shark Tank, and really allowed me to knock on the department store doors. And then, I think what's interesting, I've always felt that volunteering is crucial to life. So when I was struggling with our company and it was really surviving, not thriving. And I was still hanging in there. And I went to Haiti to volunteer. And that's where I learned about the Sephora Accelerate program. And I applied to it. I got in. And basically, they beauty idoled me and rebuilt my brand with me. And now we're exclusive in Sephora because I'm loyal. Can't even buy it on my website, the contemporary line. Very grateful. But to get that kind of wisdom. So I think that the why me is I'm always open and curious. I'm trying to learn all the time. That's why I want to come take your course. And I think that with that comes the idea of all the resources you need will appear, very Plato, right? If you're present and you're not judging yourself and you're open, then what you need will appear. And it does. And I think people don't make it because maybe they shut down, they judge it, someone didn't like their idea, someone made fun of it. Mm-hmm. It's hard to protect your ideas.
Yeah. None of this is easy. I mean,
right?
If
No,
it was easy,
it's not Pollyanna. I might be a happy person, but this is not Pollyanna.
Well, let me dig into that a little bit, and bringing it to stakeholder leadership and servant leadership, because your eyes keep lighting up every time I see this. So,
service.
So let me ask you something that I talk a lot with my class about. This is not the typical type of leadership. This is not what people expect of a business leader, of a for-profit leader at all. So I'd really like to pick your brain. Do you have to hire a certain kind of person? Do you bring somebody in who's surprised by the way you run your business? That they look around and go, really? This isn't what they taught me in my finance
not
class.
At all.
I don't remember this in marketing.
There wasn't a chapter about this.
Is it that some people just don't fit and they don't work out, or is it at some point is it like you flick a switch and they see and they get it? Holy cow, this isn't what I was taught, but this works. What's been your experience working with people in your organization?
Yeah, no, that's excellent questions, guys. I love you guys. We had to let.
This is not to interrupt. This is our first podcast together, so
you guys should take this on the road.
I don't know what I'm doing.
Well, this is fabulous. This is fabulous. Well, then that makes three of us. We're figuring it out as we go. We had to, in the very early days, let go of a lot of people.
Yeah.
Even a partner, because really didn't understand. This is not about you and your needs. this is about farmers, and I don't really care about your ego or your desire to be at some party. We will pack boxes and we will carry them, and I will today. And you can't be afraid. You can't only be there to try to get the moment when you're at the cocktail party or the whatever. That is not the business. The business core is, reinventing, doing things outside of the box, and they might not be the fun things that people look for in a exciting, glamorous industry like perfume. Because ours is a social enterprise. So it's different in that respect. And then what happened was I sort of like the traveling musicians. You find people and you notice they're like the traveling musician story. Someone's playing a trumpet by themselves and sounds nice, but then they hook up with someone with a guitar, and then everything just starts to go along, and now it's a beautiful orchestra. And so I collect people when I observe someone that's really fantastic. And ironically, none of them come from the beauty industry. Yeah. So that's kind of interesting. They came with I don't know what I'm doing, but I sure believe in your cause, and I like to be around you. That's the other thing.
I just want to jump in and make sure that I'm understanding right. So you found yourself prioritizing people who fit the culture rather than who have maybe the knowledge of the industry.
That's right. The people from the industry never worked. We tried. Didn't work at all. What's interesting, though, is our model's different because we're in Sephora stores. They are beauty central, and it rocks. I consider Sephora my family. I just went over to Walden Galleria this morning and did a training. There's hugs, there's tears. Everyone gets a copy of my book, and these women will say to me, I've never met an author. I've never met a CEO. No one's ever given me a signed book. In fact, they were joking, saying they wanted this philosophy book more than the perfume. And that excites me because I feel like the stronger you are, the stronger I am. So if we can give you the tools, that stoic wisdom to go change your life, then everything will work. And then somewhere in there, they sell beautiful amounts of our perfume, but I don't ask them to. I just tell them the story, and I want to make sure their lives are better. And it's been the most exciting model for us to be a leader in sales and also without pushing people with numbers. We just really want them to have a great day. And there's always a tear, there's always a hug, there's always laughs, and they're having a good time because life's short. And I think that back to leadership, I want people to have fun. I want people to have a really exciting day. I know that when the merchants picked us up in the U.S., you know what they said to us? They said, so you take on these really tough world issues, but yet your brand is playful and you don't take yourself seriously. I think that's it.
It's super hard to find, and you're kind of alluding to this, I just want to go a layer deeper. It's super hard to find, good talent across the board. And you mentioned how all industry folks haven't worked out for your company. No one's going to really work harder, statistically, than the founder of the company, especially in those early few years. Like you're putting in, like I say, 25/7, and nobody else is going to. So how do you find those people? Yeah. What's that process like, and what's your advice to entrepreneurs in a similar space that you were in?
Nate, they're called your family, and they'll work for free.
They can't say no to you,
They can't say no. My husband works for free. He owned a Volkswagen dealership. He sold it years ago. He's got a great sales management expertise. He hasn't drawn income. He works with us. My son, who actually held up my book when he was 13, first edition, I gave it to him. He said, this is the beginning of the empire. And I said, well, one day you'll be taking care of the empire. How did he know? I don't know. But he handles all the training across the country. And he has a 100% love score. And that's near impossible. And he's millennial. And my daughter is taking pre-law philosophy at St. Mary's. She asked to come work with me. I said, you can do all my trademarking. And so I get to be with my family, and it's really lovely. And what's exciting about the Sephora model is they love founders. So basically anybody in my family that comes in is a founder. And so the core of our company is a really lean machine that is family. So there's not a lot of costs. So it's a different model, but family-run businesses, I think, are really special because we treat the 7 virtues like a baby. It's a sibling my children have known all their lives, and that's contagious. So when my son goes in and trains a Sephora store, they then treat the 7 virtues like their little sibling, and it's like a being, and it's got a life, and I think that's very exciting. So it's a very different business model, but I think the core of it is, as long as we're having fun, and people feel good about themselves, and that no one judges them and they don't judge themselves, and that they're open. When you're open, all those resources appear. So what's interesting is that if you can remind people of those things personally, then it spills over beautifully into their professional life. But the core of our lives, you can't separate personal from professional, right? If somebody's undermining you or harming you in your life, you need to get rid of them. And I'm very clear about that. I don't want anybody being undermined or, or whining or moaning. Like, there's no time for that. There's enough, awful things in the world. You're fortunate to live in North America. There can be no room for a pity party or victim chic or any of that nature. I'm tough on that.
Yeah. So, in the benefit of having your son working for you is, he's not going to do that to his mother.
He knows better.
If he knows better.
He knows better.
Let me ask you a question specifically about that. Yeah. I'm going to ask you a question that's asked to me a lot.
Oh, okay.
As I talk about servant leadership and stakeholder leadership. There's probably somebody watching this podcast that's going, oh, come on. She sounds so soft. She sounds so nice. She's just being nice to people. That's not what business needs. Business needs to make money. I'm sure you've heard this.
Oh, yeah.
You've encountered people who think this way. I get asked this all the time. Yeah. Now, what do you say how do you respond to someone who says, well, this is soft leadership. This isn't realistic.
Well, they're not seeing the behind the scenes. I can be very tough. When I seek out excellence, not perfection, but excellence. And it's a fine line when you're not reaching excellence and you've got to remind everyone what that looks like. But you can't compromise it and forfeit kindness in that. And that is the dance. The dance is to show kindness when you're being firm with someone. And I can literally work with someone and be very firm. You would not want to be in that room. And 5 minutes later, I'm buying pizza. Let's go. It's done. And then we're all going to step up and be excellent and have faith in each other. I have the same conversation with myself. I'm sure you do the same thing. We're hard on ourselves. I want excellence, not perfection, but I really want it to be wonderful. And so I'm not okay if it's mediocre or halfway there. And so as tough as I am on myself, I'm going to be tough on our team. And it's constant. And that hurts me to have to do that. But then we get through it, and then we're in a better place, and we know where we're going. And so the behind the scenes is tough. And I'm sure you're tough with your students. If someone doesn't reach the level of what you think they're capable of, they're going to get a mark they don't like.
And I know we've probably got a lot of my students commenting and complaining right now. Right now. Preach it, sister. You don't know what he's like. You think he's so nice.
Right. He's not nice. I know. And I'm not either. My son's going, I know. He's watching it on Facebook. Right. But we're not. But we are, we have to expect a lot. I mean, for me, I'll go back to the great teachers I had in high school when we were poor. And my teachers were the caliber of university professors. We lived in a university town. And they gave up that chance to work in university to be with us in public school. And they had such high expectations of us. And I wanted to rise to meet those expectations. And I think that we can be kind. It's not soft to have high expectations of yourself and others. It's not soft at all. But to not have expectations of others is very unkind in leadership. To not actually have, this is where I envision you, let's get there and help people get there, that's not leadership. And I think that having high expectations of people where you keep pushing them out of their comfort zone is growth, is wonderful, and it's tough to do. It's not fun to be firm with somebody, but if you believe they're skilled and talented and they can get there, you have to.
It's a way to make them better.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and we do it
to ourselves. When they're better, we're better.
Right. I do it to myself. I'll go away and I'll take responsibility and I'll rehash something over and over because I didn't see it. And how do I become a better leader? Constantly. We have to constantly be working on ourselves. And those high expectations of ourselves is really how we keep stretching. I don't want to be the same person in 2 years that I am today. I want to know more. I want to be a better person. And, by the end of our lives, by the very, very end, we'll be at the level where we're supposed to be, where maybe our mere broken mortal selves will reach the level of our soul, and it'll all be one, and it'll be miraculous. And along the way, I'm going to be a bumbling mortal, making mistakes, and that's okay, as long as I learn from them.
There's the philosophy again.
Yeah, I'm damn right. It's always there. It's always there.
So I know we're pressed for time. I want to kind of wrap this up. Social entrepreneurship, impact entrepreneurship, the similar space you're in right now is kind of on the rise. In fact, a 43 North company won one of our awards last year for a similar type enterprise. So my question is, what's your advice for those folks who are on the fence about, social entrepreneurship, social enterprises, and, obviously, you're kind of a beacon of success, something to look towards. What's your advice to those folks starting out and, in those early days.
Yeah. Be persistent. Don't give up. Protect your ideas. Get a mentor. Be willing to invest your own money. I launched on my Visa card. No one else is going to invest in you if you're not willing to take your own money too. But if you stay the course, you'll do fine. I think that if your motives are true and you have something that you're so completely worked up about, go do it. Like it's you're just so fired up and you realize the world isn't doing something about it. Go do it. I get a frog in my throat when I think about it. Just go do it and it'll be fine. It'll work out. It will, I promise. But you won't get rich. So just get ready for that. You're not going to be a millionaire. That's okay.
Well, Barb, thank you so much for taking the time today. I know you're busy here at the Chloe Conference. For those who want to learn more about you or connect possibly, how can they do so?
There's a couple of ways. barbstegemann.com or the7virtues.com. It's the digit 7. We're also on Instagram. I know that the young folks in school are all on
They love
Instagram.
scrolling.
Yeah, so we're there, and I write everybody back. So,
Great.
yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
We'll check in with you down the road sometime.
Yeah, I'd love to talk to you guys again. You guys make a great team.
Thank you. Cheers.
That was too short.
I know.
Can't we just hang out?
I want to thank Barb for joining us on the podcast this week and also our partners over at the UB Center for Leadership and Organizational Effectiveness. Do you want to be a better leader? Visit mgt.buffalo.edu/Chloe, that's CLOE, to learn more about our upcoming programs. Thanks again for listening. For 43 North, I'm Nate Benson. Make sure you head on over to Apple Podcasts or iTunes and leave a 5-star review of this show. The more 5-star reviews we have, the more people who will see this show. For 43 North and the UB School of Management Alumni Association, I'm Nate Benson, and we'll see you at the next one.